Discover the incredible moment when a pregnant bear's plea transforms an old man's heart. Forever. Hank leaned heavily on his rake, the crisp autumn air swirling leaves around his feet, a bittersweet reminder of the life he and Mary once shared. The vibrant colors felt muted against the gray of his solitude, a stark contrast to the laughter and warmth that filled this very space just 2 autumns ago. Just as he began to find a rhythm in his routine, the peaceful silence shattered, replaced by a low, mournful whine that resonated through the trees. Curiosity piqued, Hank followed the sound, an unsettling chill creeping up his spine. What in the world? As he navigated the underbrush, his heart sank at the sight before him. A wounded pregnant bear, limping and weary, cradled her terrified cubs close. The raw fear in her eyes mirrored the remnants of his own heartbreak. Hank had long since put walls around his grief, and suddenly they felt paper thin. Should he intervene? Or silence the gnawing pang of connection, retreating back into the safe imprisonment of his loneliness? Hank hesitated. Every rational thought screamed at him. Bears are dangerous. The town has always been wary of these majestic creatures. Yet the look in the mother's eyes called to something he'd thought buried. Compassion. Mary would have been right at his side, coaxing him to act. Her understanding laid the foundation of his heart, and now it lay in tatters, stifling his instincts. He took a shaky breath, heart racing as the weight of the decision pressed down on him, drumming in his ears. Was this about the bear? Or himself? Hank's mind flickered to the small joys of life he used to embrace. The way laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, how a morning sun filled his spirit, how each lesson with his students brought life to color. Would he sacrifice a chance to reclaim that warmth for a fear rooted in isolation? With each faltering step the bear took, silently pleading, Hank found himself entrapped in his thoughts. Fear of ridicule slipping in, mingling uneasily with an urgent sense of duty pressing against his ribs. The world seemed to shrink for a moment, leaving only the bear and her precious cubs behind a veil of autumn gold. His resolve wavered, and for the first time in years he felt desperation tugging at him to choose. Retreat. Back to the echo of a home that felt lost. Or step boldly into the unknown, risking everything for a creature he barely understood. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Hank's breath hitched as the adrenaline pulsed through him. What if he did nothing? The weight of that thought clung to him like a heavy winter coat, suffocating his resolve. This wasn't just another solitary day. It sparked a realization that completeness once thrived on interactions, however fragile they might be. Just as nature intertwined its fibers to create a breathtaking landscape he had grown to take for granted. The tension in the air thickened, stirring unease in his gut as he felt the bear's gaze boring into him. Was there a glimmer of recognition, of understanding? As he caught the shimmer of her fearful eyes, uncertainty loomed. Would he unshackle his heart, embracing a pull that had long lay dormant? Or reiterate the familiar retreat of his own pain? A choice lay heavily upon him. A precipice yet to cross, awaiting the surge of courage he'd have to summon from within. The anticipation of an unresolved moment hung palpably, heavy as the autumn sky, leaving readers yearning for the conflict's climax that was yet to unfurl. Hank felt the raw pulse of fear mingled with an unexpected warmth in his chest as he stood before the bear. It was a churning storm, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions that suddenly made the world around him seem insignificant. Time felt suspended, as if nature conspired to amplify this delicate moment of decision. Would he allow compassion to supersede caution, to offer aid to a wounded creature whose plight mirrored his own? The bear let out another soft whine, and in that moment, something shifted within him. The fear that had coiled tightly in his gut began to unravel. Memories of Mary flooded his mind, vivid snapshots of evenings spent laughing over shared cups of cocoa, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating her smile. Mary, who always believed in the goodness of humanity, who encouraged him to embrace the messiness of life. The realization struck him. In choosing not to help the bear, he would be closing another chapter of his heart, chained once more by grief. Hank took a tentative step forward, his weight shifting from the past to the possibility of connection. He could choose to confront the apprehensions that gripped him, the judgment of others, the innate instincts that told him to be afraid. But what if, instead of being pruned by isolation, he bloomed anew through an act of kindness? What skills did he possess that could translate into an act of altruism, even if it was as simple as offering comfort? He crouched low, keeping his movements slow and deliberate so as not to startle her. "You're not alone," he murmured, though he doubted she could understand the words. He glanced at her cubs, their fear evident, and considered the bond he once had with Mary, an invisible tether that drew them toward one another, despite the odds. He felt a rising urge to forge a connection, to step into the wilderness of his vulnerabilities alongside the bear. With both hands free, Hank took a visible breath and reached into his pocket for a granola bar. It wasn't much, but it was something he often used during his hikes, an offering of goodwill. He recalibrated his intentions with every heartbeat. Nothing mattered more than this act of generosity, moving past the dread of rejection or danger. As he laid the crumbled bar on the ground a few feet from the bear, he witnessed a drastic transformation in her demeanor. The tension in her form began to soften. She appeared to weigh the decision, pain still written across her features. "That's it," Hank encouraged softly, barely aware that he was talking to himself too. It was a way to reinforce his bravery, to acknowledge the importance of this moment. As the bear cautiously approached the food, Hank felt a flicker of relief ripple through him. Their shared experience was surreal. Vulnerability strummed a chord between them. He had taken a step into a realm filled with uncertainty, yet rich in potential connectedness. Hank realized he wasn't only helping the bear, he was rediscovering a piece of himself. The act fulfilled a deep-seated need, rediscovery of his own purpose in a chaotic world. His heart beat faster, rekindled by the sheer act of caring. But suddenly, a rustle from the nearby bushes disrupted the serenity. Hank's heart dropped as he spotted a group of onlookers emerging from the tree line. The stony faces of fellow residents armed with cameras, eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. Their reactions flashed a reminder that his choice could have potential consequences, thrusting him back into reality. An unsettling thought washed over him. What if they misinterpreted his actions? What if he faced ridicule or backlash for trying to help? In that moment, Hank stood at a new precipice, a new challenge to confront, ready to decide how to reconcile his moment of vulnerability with the pressing judgment of others. The winds of change had begun to stir, imbuing each breath with possibility. As Hank's resolve continued to solidify, a thought crept into his mind. Would he let their perceptions dictate who he could become? The moment of change arrived at his doorstep, leaving readers anticipating how he would face not only the crowd, but also the choice within himself that could redefine his very essence. The murmurs from the onlookers intensified. Hank's heart raced, not with the primal fear of the bear, but with an electric urgency that surged through his veins. The gathering crowd symbolized everything he had shied away from: scrutiny, applause, judgment, and expectation. Each new face stirred the pot of anxieties he had sought to quell. Were they there to cheer, to mock, or simply to observe? He took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs like a refreshing tide as he made a conscious decision to stand his ground. This was a pivotal moment. It was no longer just about him and the bear, but something larger, an embodiment of choices made against the backdrop of public perception. Would he retreat into the shadows of his own doubts, or step into the light of authenticity? The bear, still cautiously approaching the granola bar, seemed to recognize his stalwart presence. Its wary gaze flickered between him and the dwindling path of comfort on the ground. Amid all this external pressure, Hank felt a flicker of clarity, an urgent need to support not just the bear but himself as well. His decisions would define him. "Let her be," he suddenly declared, his voice booming across the clearing, surprising even himself. The crowd halted, surprised by the intensity of his words, and for a moment, The world fell silent. Hank took it as a cue to harness this newfound strength, allowing it to wash over him. "This is her moment to heal, just as I'm trying to heal," he added, vulnerable yet fierce. Faces shifted from indifference to thoughtful curiosity, a mixture of sympathy and disbelief, and within, Hank bloomed a sense of purpose. He wasn't merely a bystander in this unfolding drama. He was invested, interlinked, with the narrative of a wounded creature. The very act of defending the bear became an act of self-assertion. With eyes locked onto the she-bear, he felt a weight lift. The act of stepping forward wasn't merely about compassion. It was a reclamation of agency, igniting a fire within. He coughed, clearing his throat. Undoing years of self-imposed celibacy wasn't easy, but perhaps in this moment he could break free from the chains of judgment that bound him so tightly. The bear, encouraged by the presence of Hank and the offerings at her feet, finally approached the granola bar fully, her cubs timidly trailing behind her. Hank's heart warmed as he witnessed her tentative movements transforming into a hungry urgency, nurturing what had once been lost to fear and neglect. It mirrored his own journey, navigating the wilderness of grief towards a path filled with renewal. But as the bear began to nibble on the food, one of the onlookers audaciously raised their camera, attempting to capture the vulnerable exchange for social media. Hank, sensing the potential for his moment to be twisted into an object of ridicule or sensationalism, felt an old rage bubble up within him, the very anger he thought he had buried alongside Mary. "Stop," he shouted. "This isn't a spectacle." The sharpness of his voice shocked the crowd again. They flinched, some retreating slightly at his unexpected fervor. Immediately, he recognized that he needed their respect, not only for the bear's sake, but for the integrity of his own heart. He was living, breathing evidence of a simple truth. Compassion cannot thrive under the glare of criticism. Breath-hitching, Hank's resolve solidified once more. He wasn't merely pleading for the bear's dignity. He was forging his own identity anew, tethered to this moment of revelation. Each second expanded, pressing on him the radical notion. He could define his own narrative, one act of kindness at a time despite what judgment lay ahead. Yet even amidst this surge of clarity, another uncomfortable question loomed. Could he sustain this newfound courage as he faced further judgments, perhaps even harsher confrontations? As the bear cautiously continued to feed, Hank felt a new challenge on the horizon, one that demanded mental acuity as much as emotional resilience. Would he find a way to balance his instinct to act with the bravery to remain authentic in the face of scrutiny? The anguish of uncertainty resided within him, gathering strength like an approaching storm. The next chapter of his journey awaited, a trial by fire where he would truly test the limits of his compassionate resolve. Hank's pulse throbbed with an awkward mix of adrenaline and vulnerability as he stood rooted to the spot. The initial shock of standing up for the bear had shifted into something deeper. It began to morph into a kaleidoscope of possibilities. He felt a tug at his chest, suggesting not just a fight against public derision but a confrontation with himself, the man who knew the hardships of healing. Each heartbeat resonated with a question. Could he dismantle the walls he had erected so carefully over the years? As the bear devoured the food, her cubs cautiously joined her, revealing their own hunger and ambitions amidst the quiet sanctuary he had started to carve out. Hank's defense of this family resonated intimately with his life. Abandoning the cubs felt like abandoning pieces of himself that he could not bear to lose. He had spent so long in isolation, believing that his silence was a shield when in reality it had been a shackle. The murmurs from the crowd dwindled into whispers. Hank could sense eyes pivoting from the bear back to him, the curious glances now tempered by a mutual respect. This was no longer a mere spectacle. It was an exchange of vulnerability blooming under the veil of uncertainty. He dared to take a step closer to the bear, matching her tentative approach. His breath steadied as he engaged not only with her pain, but also with the realization of his own. The instinct to display compassion felt radical, a gamble against the uncertainty always perched at the back of his mind. As the bear's gentle hum of contentment filled the space, Hank's own fears began to shift. There was power in their shared moment, a promise of resilience that began to awaken his long-forgotten dreams. Yet, with empowerment came anticipation of conflict. One glance to the onlookers reminded him of their judgments, swirling like unseen currents. He felt them tugging at him, each expectation an invisible thread wrapped around his heart. What if they sneered? What if he faltered? This anxiety birthed an idea deep within. Perhaps he could leverage their scrutiny into a tool for growth rather than a source of shame. He pondered that while the bear was teaching him to reclaim his space, he could also inspire those watching to reconsider how they approach their own fragility. Drawing a deep breath, he raised his voice once more. "This moment is about connection," he declared, scanning the crowd's faces. "Not just for her, but for all of us. Every one of us has our burdens to bear. Don't let the noise drown out the beauty of what you see here." The change in tone was striking, pivoting from defense to an invitation. He was challenging them to confront their understanding of empathy. A ripple of murmurs swept through the crowd, hinting at a new understanding brewing between them. It was a raw energy that crackled in the air, igniting his resolve further. He was ready to engage these strangers, ready to confront his past decisions and perhaps, just perhaps, inspire transformation. In that pivotal moment of connection, Hank noticed something extraordinary. The bear, now fully absorbed in her meal, began to engage occasionally with her cubs, offering them bites and sharing with a nurturing spirit. It highlighted an essential truth about interdependence, an acknowledgement that healing requires drawing support from those we cherish, even in the darkest times. Hank took a step back, reflecting on his solitude, the hollow spaces left behind by lost connections. Did he truly believe he could forge new paths, reaching out to share both burdens and joys? The crowd began to clap softly, the sound reverberating within him, pushing through cracks in his defenses. But even as he basked in this light, a sliver of doubt crept in, sending ripples of hesitation through his heart. Would he be able to pursue this newfound connection off this stage, not just with strangers but with himself, with the people he had pushed away? The moment hung heavy in the air, blissfully unaware of Hank's impending confrontation with deeper truths, yet unresolved. In the back of his mind surged a disquieting thought. Was this awakening merely a flicker, or the first spark of a fire he could sustain? As his gaze slowly moved back toward the bear and her cubs, another question eclipsed the light. Was it too late for him to redefine his own narrative before he lost it all again? Hank stood at the edge of this unexpected breakthrough, heart pounding with unfiltered emotion. As the applause washed over him, the warmth of appreciation felt alien, yet intoxicating. Could this moment be the catalyst for real change, not just for the bear or her cubs, but for himself? His thoughts flickered like a film reel, dragging him back through memories of lost opportunities and quiet despair. He had often shunned engagement, convinced that walls were keeping him safe, unaware they suffocated his very spirit. He caught a familiar face in the crowd, an old friend, Amy, from years past. Their connection had withered like the fading paint on a forgotten canvas. Had their friendship ended because of his reluctance to share his struggles? Hank's gut twisted at the thought. He raised a hand in silent acknowledgement, but quickly withdrew it. Could he allow vulnerability to guide his actions now? Looking back at the bear, whose maternal instinct illuminated the raw reality of connection, a new resolve began blooming within him. This spectacle was morphing into an internal dialogue, one that was asking him to redefine not just his relationship with the world, but with himself. "Focus, Hank," he whispered inwardly. He needed to confront the ghosts of his past, having spent years meticulously constructing barriers against them. This newfound courage was fragile, relying heavily on the empathy this moment had unearthed. As he retreated from the crowd's applause, Hank chose not to linger on their voices. Driven instead by something deeper, he took hesitant steps away from the clamor, opting for solitude, hoping clarity would surface amidst the chaos. The late afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting playful shadows on the ground. Each step felt deliberate, a commitment to engage with his truth. Yet shadows of self-doubt followed him closely. What had he done to redeem himself? Could he face the relationships he had neglected? That unsettling echo of "what if" clawed at him as he pondered whether he could be more than just a silent spectator in his own life. He reached a small clearing where a tree stood alone, steadfast against the tide of the wind. Sinking onto the grass beneath it, he cradled his head in his hands, wrestling with the emotional onslaught. Nothing had prepared him for the weight of the emotions that surged through him now. This was not just about the bear. It was about confronting his image, the story he had told himself for years. Sliding down to sit against the rough bark, Hank recalled moments of kindness he had ignored. The smiles from passing neighbors, the laughter of old friends, and the warmth of human connection that he had consistently rebuffed. What was stopping him from reaching out, even to those who had stood by him through his secluded years? A single tear escaped his eye, blending with the raw earth beneath him. "Do I even deserve a second chance?" he questioned aloud, the cadence of his voice shaky. Just as those words left his lips, he was struck by another wave of realization. This was not merely about deserving, but about courage. The courage to extend himself, to stake a claim in the vibrant tapestry of life surrounding him. He was not only a passive observer, but could become an active participant in his narrative. As the sun dipped lower, an ember of determination ignited within him. With a deep breath, Hank rose to his feet. He was ready to face whoever might cross his path and confront the uncertainties that awaited him. Making his way back, Hank felt the weight of possibility shimmer on the horizon. He was ready to face Amy, and possibly others, to navigate the landscape of lost connections with a newfound vigor that rippled through his core. But as he approached the crowd once more, his heart raced, not just with anticipation, but with a flurry of apprehension. What might he discover about himself in these next interactions? Could it truly be this simple to dismantle the defenses he had built? Hank was on the verge of an answer, one that could shape the very fabric of his identity, for better or worse. As voices mingled and laughter danced through the air, the world felt larger, intruding yet inviting. The moment of truth lingered ahead. Would he seize this opportunity for connection, no matter the risk? Hank stepped back into the crowd, the vibrant chatter enveloping him like a cloak of uncertainty. Each face seemed a mirror, reflecting his own anxieties and hopes, yet also offering a silent challenge. Could he bridge the chasm he had so carefully constructed over the years? His palms were slick with perspiration as he scanned the crowd for Amy. The once familiar features were now slightly blurred, a poignant reminder of time lost to silence and miscommunication. A rush of apprehension surged, followed by an unexpected steely resolve. This was no longer about the bear or her cubs, it was about him reclaiming a piece of his humanity. Hank's mind raced as he envisioned their last conversation, the awkward silences filled with unspoken words. Would his admission of limitation be seen as a plea for understanding or a display of weakness? The weight of that moment pressed down, urging him to act. He stilled himself, pushing against the tide of doubt that threatened to pull him back into solitude. Determination surged within him, compelling him to seek connection, no matter how fragile. He took a deep breath and strode toward the laughter, feeling both vulnerable and powerful. As he approached a group of familiar faces, Amy's laugh floated toward him, rich and genuine. His heart raced anew, a familiar mix of warmth and fear. Would she still be willing to reconcile a friendship he had neglected? "Hank?" The voice, gentle yet piercing, drew him near. She had noticed him. He could see her eyes widen, flickering with curiosity and surprise. "Hey, Amy," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. This was it, the moment to unearth the truth that had been buried beneath layers of indifference and avoidance. The air between them crackled with unspoken history and unresolved tension. "I saw you earlier," she began, her sincerity cracking the remnants of his isolation. "That moment with the bear? It was incredible. You really showed everyone something important." Her words hung between them, a delicate bridge over turbulent waters. The acknowledgement made him blush with both pride and shame. Pride for the courage he had shown. Shame for all the times he had hidden away. "Thanks, but I don't know if I've truly earned that praise. I've been so caught up in my own head." Amy tilted her head, her expression softening. "We all struggle, Hank. It's okay to admit it. But you have to start reaching out. We miss you." Her straightforwardness startled him. Here was someone who had navigated the rough waters of his silence and still stood ready to reconnect. Yet, how could he assure her that he was ready to let down his guard? What if I don't know how? His voice caught in his throat, laden with vulnerability. Then we figure it out together, she replied, and the genuineness in her eyes sparked something deep within him, an ember glowing just beneath the ashes of past reluctance. The sincerity of her offer settled around him, cradling the rawness of his doubts and fears. Hank felt a stirring inside him, a call to action. I'd like that. I'd like to try. As they exchanged tentative smiles filled with possibility, a wave of affection washed over him, urging him to lean into the moment. With each word shared, the walls he thought were insurmountable began to fragment. Perhaps it was never about deserving another chance, but about embracing the courage to ask for it. But even as hope swelled within him, a nagging fear returned. Could he maintain this newfound connection? What would happen when the initial thrill wore off and the reality of his past confronted him once more? The laughter around them faded slightly, replaced by the steady thrum of expectation. The electricity of change was palpable. Hank sensed that this moment would not merely pass. It had the potential to reshape everything. In that breath of realization, he felt a shift beneath his feet, a moment teetering on the edge of revelation. The real test lay ahead. Would he have the courage to face not just connections lost, but the self he had hidden for too long? With Amy standing before him, ready to embrace whatever came next, Hank knew the time had come to face the toughest challenge yet, his internal battle. Could he truly step into the light of vulnerability and allow himself to grow? As they began to walk deeper into the crowd, laughter and voices swirled around them. He glanced back at the clearing where the bear had once stood. The specter of the past lingered, but hope glimmered ahead. What awaited him as he took those first committed steps into this new chapter? Hank fell into step beside Amy, the vibrant chaos of the crowd pulsating around them like a heartbeat. Each laugh and cheer rang in his ears, a stark contrast to the silence that had enveloped him for so long. The weight of his isolation began to lighten as he shared small talk with Amy, but a deeper part of him remained wary. He felt like a soldier entering battle, armor rusted and ill-fitting. "What have you been up to?" Amy asked, a genuine curiosity weaving through her words. His mind briefly skated over the mundane details of daily life, slogging through reports, endless coffee breaks, and interactions with coworkers that felt more like obligations than connections. How could he convey that the past few years had been an internal war? Instead, he opted for simplicity. "Just working, trying to figure it all out, I guess. Figuring things out is important, but we're meant to do that together, you know." Her encouragement rippled through him, yet Hank felt a pang of uncertainty. Was he even worthy of companionship anymore? The question nagged at the edges of his confidence, threatening to pull him back into the shadows he had fought to escape. The conversation shifted, buoyed by shared laughter and mutual history, giving Hank a glimpse of the connection he had once taken for granted. But as they strolled, he became increasingly aware of the invisible walls he had built. He hesitated, struggling to find the precise ways to articulate his feelings. Fear, hope, uncertainty, all tangled into a knot of emotional resistance. Taking a leap, he finally said, "I've been scared to reach out to anyone, Amy. I thought if I distanced myself things would settle. But now, I see that I've just been isolating myself further." "Have you thought about what you want for yourself now?" she asked, sincere, yet probing. The question struck him like an unexpected blow. What did he want? The truth slipped through cracks he hadn't even noticed were there. He yearned for belonging, to be part of something greater than himself. Yet facing that desire came with the weight of vulnerability he had shielded himself from for so long. "I want to reconnect," he said, words tumbling forward, unfiltered and raw. "I want to be a part of life again." A soft smile spread across Amy's face, illuminating her features. "That's a great start, Hank. But you know, it's not just about wanting it. It's about allowing yourself to be a part of it." Their conversation painted a new landscape filled with potential. With each exchange, Hank sensed a fracture in his emotional walls, a crack, no longer a barrier, but a gateway. Yet the thought of statistical failure was grim, looming over him like a specter, What if he faltered? What if he failed to grasp this opportunity? As they neared the center of the crowd, Hank saw a couple of familiar faces. Instead of retreating, he took a breath, admitting to himself that confronting these interactions was a necessary step in his evolution. With a newfound resolve, he approached them, mustering a smile that, while trembling, held hints of self-assurance. Conversations ignited around him, warmth enveloping him as he found himself laughing and engaging with people he had once shunned. With each small victory, the echo of abandonment bled away, replaced by a growing understanding of his need for connection. Yet, just as he began to feel immersed, anxiety clawed at him again. What happened when he returned to the quieter moments, where his thoughts would turn critical and unrelenting? The lurking doubt screamed louder. Was he truly making progress, or merely fooling himself? Hank felt the weight of these uncertainties hardening in his chest as he excused himself momentarily. He moved away from the crowd, seeking a patch of solitude where he could breathe, where reality wouldn't press so hard on his conscience. As he steeled himself and stood at the edge of the busy area, a decision crystallized within him. He would confront not only his fears, but the potential of this new chapter. The distant sound of Amy's laughter echoed invitingly. He had taken significant strides. He could not let self-doubt embolden itself. The darkness of the past was persistent, but Hank realized he held the power to rewrite his narrative. Before he rejoined the throng, he took one last breath, contemplating the next stages of his journey. There would be challenges, but with each step, he could cultivate the growth he craved. As he turned back toward the laughter and connection, an urge to open up surged. Hank thought maybe the most profound step in his journey wasn't just about facing the people in his life, but confronting the most intricate layers of his own heart. What awaited him next? A deeper dive into the emotions he had long buried, and the courage necessary to embrace them fully. Would he finally allow himself to feel, to connect, or would fear draw a tighter grip? As he took a step forward, he felt an unsettling thrill. The moment of truth was fast approaching. Hank stepped back into the warmth of the crowd, Amy's laughter still ringing in his ears like a siren song beckoning him closer. He could feel the tension in his chest starting to unwind, as if the very act of rejoining these familiar faces was a ritual that might exorcise the ghosts of his isolation. But beneath that surface, the whirlwind of uncertainty churned. He was teetering on the edge of something pivotal. Each person he greeted became a test of his resolve, a measure of how far he had come and how much ground still lay ahead. As he navigated through the throng, Hank spotted a group of co-workers huddled together, their energy electric with conversation. A mixture of apprehension and determination coursed through him. They were people he had previously classified as simply colleagues, yet here they stood, vibrant and whole. He realized suddenly that he craved more than just a polite exchange. He longed for connection, for the camaraderie he had discarded. Taking a bold step, he approached them, heart pounding as he fought the instinct to back away. "Hey, everyone." His voice, uncertain but loud enough to be heard, felt foreign to his ears. The faces turned toward him, momentarily surprised. Then the smiles emerged, a flicker of warmth that ignited a hesitant flame within him. "Hank, where have you been?" one asked, eyes alight with genuine curiosity. In that moment, he felt the walls he had constructed begin to dissolve, replaced by a tentative openness ignited by a shared human experience. "You know how it is. I got caught up in some things." He searched their expressions for judgment, but found none, just inviting encouragement. As the conversation continued, Hank found himself drawn into laughter and banter, each moment contributing to a reservoir of belonging he hadn't realized had been longing to fill. There was an ease that arose, transforming anxiety into a cautious optimism. He realized he wasn't just participating, he was engaging, a monumental shift for someone who had spent so long trapped in his own echo chamber. But within that realization flickered a darker whisper. What if they truly knew the extent of his struggles? The vulnerability of exposing his fragility threatened to pull him back. Yet another voice chimed in, louder now. What if they understood and accepted him in his entirety? After a while, he found a cozy corner away from the festivity, wanting to internalize this newfound perspective. Still trembling from the exhilaration of sharing space and joy with others, he contemplated an important piece within himself. How could he maintain this connection moving forward? What practices could he establish to keep this fire of feeling alive amidst the chaos of insecurities, stress, and doubt? That's when he realized something profound. The act of choosing to extend himself outward required as much effort as it would to nurture a garden of relationships. It was a commitment he had to make repeatedly, not simply a one-time endeavor. He didn't just want to slip back into the comfortable numbness of his previous existence. He was ready to embrace the challenge. As he lingered in thought, Amy joined him, leaning against the wall. "You seem to take a breath of fresh air back there," she said, her voice smooth like honey. "What's going through your mind?" "I guess I'm trying to measure how much weight I'm willing to carry," he admitted, vulnerability washing over him again. "Stepping out has been refreshing, but I worry I'll slip back into those old patterns." Her smile shifted toward understanding, a knowing look that indicted she believed in him. "You've already made progress, one step at a time, right?" "Right." Hank nodded, absorbing her words. "Maybe I need to start creating those small rituals that keep me anchored. Things that remind me to reach out even when the urge to retreat comes creeping in." A flicker of determination sparked within him, igniting a direction he had not yet considered. This wasn't merely about feeling connected. It was about crafting a life where connection became a habitual choice. As they stepped back into the crowd, Hank realized that despite his fears, there was a latent strength within him, a fortitude waiting to thrive. With each small act of outreach, he could fortify his sense of belonging and memory of connection. Why wait to feel whole? Yet, an echo lingered. Darkness was never far. Were these moments of connection enough to transform the fragile structure of his identity? Would the fear of returning to isolation still haunt him, or was he finally willing to fight for a future where warmth thrived? As he turned to rejoin the laughter, those questions clung to the edges of his consciousness, heavily waiting for answers. Would he summon the courage to confront his darkness head-on, or would he be swept away by the pull of old, familiar shadows? As the laughter surrounded him once more, a sense of urgency coiled within him. A reckoning loomed ahead, and he was about to confront it. Hank stepped back into the crowd, the laughter and lightness surrounding him, yet deep down, an unease nestled into his thoughts. Each sound, the bubbling exchanges, the hearty chuckles, was a reminder of how easily he could float away from this feeling, whether through his own cowardice or by defaulting to isolation. His new commitment to connection felt like a fistful of sand held too tightly. Any moment could shatter it, and he would be left with nothing but the remnants of what could have been. As he moved through the throng, he kept his focus on Amy. There was something magnetic about her upbeat energy that nudged him toward a clearer path. He wanted to embody that same vibrancy, but there was an unanswered question lurking. How? Without thinking, he found himself drifting away from the laughter toward a quiet spot near the bar. With a drink in hand, he grasped the glass tightly, trying to anchor himself against the chaos. Suddenly, Hank's gaze locked onto one of his colleagues across the room, Ted, who was animatedly discussing a recent project. Hank felt a mix of admiration and intimidation. Ted always seemed so confident. Was it possible that Hank could channel some of that self-assuredness? It was not just about maintaining relationships. It was about actively participating in the company with an authentic voice. But what if he stumbled again? What if old habits enveloped him and pushed him back into obscurity? He took a deep breath, willing himself to breathe in the exuberance around him. This wasn't just a celebration. It was a test of his newly carved resolve. Watching Ted, Hank felt a flicker of determination. Perhaps it was time to confront his insecurities further. Finding the courage to approach Ted could serve as a mini ritual of connection, a way to transform his fear into action. Pushing away from the bar, he strode toward the group gathered around Ted. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, propelling him forward with greater insistence. "Hey, Ted," he called, forcing a boldness into his voice that he didn't entirely feel. Ted turned, his grin broadening. "Hank, join us. We were just discussing the last project's brainstorming session. You've got some great ideas." The pressure rose in Hank's chest, but that encouraging response acted as a buoy, pulling him closer. "Yeah, I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts. He casually leaned against the table, wading into the discussion. As the conversation unfolded, Hank noticed how comfortable he felt voicing his opinions, how each contribution was met with genuine interest. It was thrilling. For once, the pulse of his engagement overshadowed the terror of potential rejection. He wanted to savor this moment, holding on to it as a tangible victory over his doubts. But that exhilaration was short-lived when he caught a glimpse of another colleague, Sarah, uncharacteristically withdrawing from the group. Her smile faltered, and Hank's earlier worries crept back in. What if he engaged with this dynamic only to fail at offering the warmth he had just received? Would he end up disheartening someone else, just as he often felt disheartened? No one needs to suffer alone, a voice within whispered, reminding him that connection didn't have to open oneself up to vulnerability. It could be an invitation to simply participate in someone else's narrative. Wasn't this the journey he was on? In a surge of spontaneity, Hank broke away from Ted's conversation, heading toward Sarah. "Hey, Sarah. Just wanted to check in. How's your day going?" She looked up, a bit surprised. "Oh, just a bit overwhelming, honestly. Trying to juggle a few things." Her voice was barely a whisper, but Hank noticed the genuine appreciation in her eyes. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, the words escaping before self-doubt could weigh them down. Her expression softened, and a small smile broke through. "Yeah, maybe I do." It was a small victory, but it carried weight. Hank realized that connection was more than just about extending oneself. It was about being available. The act of reaching out held the power to shift someone's mood, to provide solidarity in the face of adversity. But as his conversation deepened with Sarah, questions shadowed him again. Would simple gestures of outreach really be enough? What if he faltered? There remained so much uncertainty, an endless landscape of potential failure threaded through the fabric of his evolving identity. Hank felt that familiar tension return, but this time, that flicker of hope also lingered. He genuinely wanted to make this work, to confront his fears and shape a narrative he could be proud of. As they spoke, the weight of his thoughts steadied. Yet in that very moment, an undeniable truth settled upon him like a thunderous drum. The shadow of isolation still lurking at the edges, begging him to retreat. Would he fold to that instinct, or find a way to break through the encroaching darkness? As he navigated this pivotal night filled with laughter and connection, Hank knew he stood at a precipice, one that required him to confront the very heart of his struggles. And that heart was about to reveal something crucial. It wasn't just about him. It was about discovering how far he could go in the realm of vulnerability and human connection. Little did he know, the choices he made tonight would determine whether he would sink or soar in his journey of self-discovery. Hank stood amidst the crowd, buoyed by a newfound sense of purpose that pulsated through every interaction. The laughter and lightness that enveloped him were now intertwined with clarity. He no longer saw these people as mere acquaintances. They were potential allies in his journey towards healing. He felt a shift within him, a harmonious resonance between his heart's longings and the genuine connections he had begun to forge. In the soft glow of the evening, the crowd became a tapestry of shared stories, and Hank didn't hesitate to step into the weave. Each small exchange filled him with a sense of belonging he had thought was forever lost. Conversations about mundane topics blossomed into deeper dialogues. He found himself sharing pieces of his life, letting go just enough to be seen, not merely as a shrouded figure in the background, but as an active participant in a vibrant symphony. When he encountered Amy again, she gestured toward a quieter area near the steps with a knowing smile. "You found your stride," she remarked, and the pride in her voice ignited something within him. "I can see the difference in you. I feel it," he admitted, surprised by the raw conviction that accompanied his words. This wasn't just about dishing out kindness, it was about allowing himself to receive it too. A personal lesson unfolded. Connection wasn't a burden. It was a shared responsibility that nourished both parties. As the night wore on, Hank noticed Sarah rejoining the crowd, her earlier hesitation replaced with vibrant engagement. The sight filled him with warmth, His earlier outreach had ignited a spark of solidarity that radiated beyond their conversation. He felt a swell of pride. He was not merely surviving this night, he was thriving, transforming the shadows of doubt into lights of opportunity. Yet, within the glow of progress, a nagging fear still lurked, whispering insidious doubts. What if this was fleeting? What if retreat became inevitable? Hank recognized the need to confront this anxiety directly. He had spent too long guarding his heart, and concluded that vulnerability was not a weakness but the backbone of authentic connection. He took a deep breath and gathered his resolve. "Amy," he called, pulling his friend into a conversation about intentions. "What if we make this a pact? Something to keep each other accountable for reaching out, not just tonight but always." "Absolutely," she agreed, her eyes gleaming. "Let's hold each other to it." That constructive agreement unfolded a new dimension in their connection, solidifying his resolve. He could no longer operate solely within the confines of his insecurities. He had to create a framework of support around him. As the clock struck midnight, Hank found himself standing at the center of a lively circle, fully invested in the laughter and joy unfurling around him. The sense of shared vulnerability was intoxicating. He waved his hands to call for attention, feeling a rush of courage propel him forward. "Hey everyone, can I have your attention?" The crowd turned, curious. The light-hearted banter quieted, and he felt the flutter of nerves raise its head, but he pushed through it. "Tonight has meant a lot to me, and I want to thank you all for being part of it. I realize that being vulnerable with each other is what truly makes us strong." Appreciative smiles blossomed, and he felt an overwhelming relief wash over him. He was intertwined in this human experience, validated not only by his perseverance, but by the acceptance of others. But the true epiphany awaited him, nestled in the deepest core of his conviction. The fear that had restrained him for so long was deeply rooted in a narrative that no longer served him. He lifted his chin and addressed the crowd again. "I promise to hold myself accountable going forward, to never shy away from opening my heart again. This is only the beginning." Cheers and applause erupted, and Hank could feel the collective energy of approval. The night culminated in connections deepened, and an infectious sense of purpose among the group. As he locked eyes with Amy, he felt an unshakable bond form between them, one that went beyond the fleeting moments of joy. It was a shared commitment, a pledge to navigate the uncertainty together both in trials and triumphs. Hank left that gathering not just transformed, but also anchored in the profound understanding that every engagement is a step towards healing. With each brave choice to reconnect, he dismantled the walls he had built, fostering an environment of compassion for himself and others. Filled with a newfound confidence, Hank vowed to continue reaching out, allowing space for his fears, yet not letting them dictate his narrative any longer. He embraced the marathon of emotional growth ahead, ready to keep building connections, one moment at a time. Now, for those who resonate with this journey of transformation, it's your time to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others find this message. Comment your reactions and theories about Hank's growth, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand that your support is crucial.